You may have heard about the 50+1 rule whenever pundits and journalists speak about the exceptional fan culture in the Bundesliga, low ticket prices, standing sections, and consistently full stadiums no matter the opposition. So, how does this DFB rule ensure middle-of-the-pack German clubs like VfB Stuttgart, for example, have a higher average attendance than clubs such as Liverpool, Manchester City, AC Milan, and PSG? Hey, my name is Adrian and welcome to Rabona TV. This video is part of our Explainer series and is in fact just the second video in the series. We're still raising and nurturing this little guy. But if you're a football fan and like to have live discussions with other fans, talk about the goings-on from a weekend of fixtures, or like to get educated on in-depth player bios, and now with explainer videos that cover a variety of concepts within the world of football, then be sure to hit that subscribe button. And hey, say hey in the comments section because we love seeing new names around here. Thank you kindly. Back to the topic. To start, what is the 50+1 rule? Well, before 1998, German clubs were regarded as not-for-profit organizations that were run entirely by member associations. Members would elect sporting directors and other staff to run the club, ensuring that they still had a say in how the club was run, via the election process. With this, any private ownership of a club was strictly prohibited. So, what does that equate to? Well, you'd never see any foreign billionaire takeovers of a club. In essence, you wouldn't have an oil baron take over a team like Werder Bremen, for example. The injection of millions into the squad, ramp-up of ticket prices, and the eventual domination of the league thanks to massive financial disparity between themselves and the less minted clubs. So, with the 50+1 rule introduced in 1998, this ensured that fans would never be taken for granted as the clubs would still be geared towards serving the fans, instead of making profits. As Hans-Joachim Watzke of Borussia Dortmund put it, Watzke added, quote, "Most clubs won't get a Roman Abramovich, who in the first place wants to see Chelsea winning. Most of the investors want to earn money. And where do they get it from? The spectators." So what does the 50+1 rule ensure in practice? Well, in order for a team to compete within the Bundesliga, the club itself, in essence the members of the club, as opposed to the outside investor, must hold the majority of its voting rights, the majority being 50 shares plus one more share, aka they would be a majority ownership. Any club who have a commercial investor with more than a 49% stake will not be allowed to compete within the Bundesliga, besides a couple of exceptions, of course. And hey, we may as well dive into them now. So basically, the members of the club must have the final say on decisions made within the club, but that isn't to say that no club within Germany has had a rich investor behind it with majority control. When the 50+1 rule was put into practice in 1998, they also included an exception to the rule. Any individual or company that has invested in a club for over 20 years may apply for majority control of said club. For example, Bayer Leverkusen was founded by Bayer employees, Bayer being the massive German pharmaceutical company. Similarly, VfL Wolfsburg was founded by Volkswagen employees in 1945. Given the long-standing interest by these investors, Bayer and Volkswagen, they were granted exemptions to the 50+1 rule. A more recent example of an exemption comes by way of Hoffenheim, where in 2014, software entrepreneur Dietmar Hopp, he was offered a majority stake in Hoffenheim's ownership as he had been investing in the club for over 2 decades. Now let's look at RB Leipzig as an example of where things get a little bit murky, as their ownership managed to find a loophole in the 50+1 rule. So first, before RB Leipzig were purchased by Red Bull, the famous Austrian company behind the Red Bull energy drink, the club was known as SSV Markranstadt. The club was completely made over with new facilities and even a new club crest. Since the DFB, like most football associations, doesn't allow teams to have a sponsor in their club name, Rasenballsport Leipzig was chosen as the new club name in order to easily abbreviate it as RB Leipzig. Rasenballsport, by the way, means lawn ball sports. So yes, every time you've heard someone call them Red Bull Leipzig, they're technically incorrect. Just as a side note, RB Salzburg, their Austrian counterparts, are officially known in Austria as FC Red Bull Salzburg, as the Austrian Bundesliga doesn't have any restrictions over sponsor names within the club name. However, whenever they play in UEFA competitions, they play with a modified club badge and go by FC Salzburg. Now, when Red Bull purchased Leipzig in 2009, they made their intentions clear. They wanted to take this German 5th-tier club to the Bundesliga within 8 years, and they promised a transfer budget of around 100 million euros. Well, they did just as they had promised, as Leipzig secured promotion to the Bundesliga in 2016, 1 year ahead of their proposed deadline. So why do other teams hate them? Why do some opposing fans refuse to travel to away games at Red Bull Arena? Why did Dynamo Dresden fans throw a bull's head onto the field during a match against RB Leipzig? Well, Leipzig's owners found a loophole in the 50+1 rule by way of virtually controlling who their voting members were. When Borussia Dortmund charges their members around €62 annually to become a voting member of the club, Leipzig charges around €1,000 for membership. And that high price point still doesn't grant you voting rights. Why do opposing fans hate this in particular? Well, let's look at Dortmund as an example. As mentioned before, the price to become a voting member is extremely affordable, and the 139,000 club members can vote to veto things such as ticket price hikes and much more. With RB Leipzig and their initial 17 club members, critics believe that the members were very much in the pocket of Red Bull and that the interests of the fans were not taken as seriously as they are with other clubs, straying away from the fan culture that the 50+1 rule is supposed to promote. By the way, now it seems as though RB Leipzig has around 750-ish paying members. So with a company taking over a club and injecting a ton of money into building a top squad, it flies completely in the face of the intended purpose of the 50+1 rule, as we had mentioned earlier, when we were talking about guys like Abramovich coming in, if you'll remember. So what does the future of German football look like regarding the 50+1 rule? Well, there have been a few officials from various clubs in Germany that believe that in order for German clubs to be competitive at a European or global level, they should scrap the 50+1 rule. One of those detractors is Bayern Munich CEO Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, who says, quote, "Personally, I am in favor of leaving it to every club to decide whether they open the door on outside capital. We're the only one of the top 5 leagues with this luxury. We have a competition which I believe is not only national, but also global." In fact, in March of 2018, Bundesliga and Bundesliga 2 club members voted on whether they should keep the 50+1 rule, as well as VAR, but that's besides the point, as an active rule within the top 2 leagues in Germany. Although some did voice against it, ultimately the majority of clubs chose to keep the 50+1 rule. Speaking of which, how do you feel about it? On the one hand, the football fan is treated as a part of the club, not a commodity. Low ticket prices and packed stadiums for the ultimate fan experience, while the league is extremely competitive throughout. Besides, Bayern running away with it for 5 seasons straight and are in touching distance of a 6th as of the making of this video. But no foreign investors will come in and treat your club like their plaything, changing the club's identity. Think of what happened at Cardiff when they had their club colors and club badge completely changed. On the other hand, with the 50+1 rule, many teams are unable to catch up to Bayern, and it's become a bit monotonous at the top of the table in Germany, as alluded to just a second ago. There's a massive imbalance in Germany, with Bayern at the top and no other teams regularly challenging them for the title. Plus, with other leagues allowing outside investors, German clubs could, emphasis on the could, eventually fall behind in the UEFA competitions, at least when it comes to competing regularly in the finals. There's benefits to each side, so have your say in the comments on which direction you think the Bundesliga should go regarding the 50+1 rule. I hope this was somewhat helpful for you in understanding it, or that you simply learned something new today. My name is Adrian, subscribe if you're new around here, and we'll hopefully see you in the next video. Bye!